Hey, thanks for joining us here on the Coach for Life podcast. Here on the show, we talk with coaches who have not only had great success on the scoreboard, but have also had long-term success helping their players win in life. Coach, you have an incredible opportunity to make a lifelong difference in the life of your players. Don't miss it. Coach, think about the amount of time you have to invest in your players. How do you maximize that time? How do you use that time to gain their trust? How do you use that time to help them become successful young men, successful husbands and fathers? How do you know when to challenge, and how do you know when to give them a hug? We're going to hear from Coach Bret Ellis. He owns his own fitness gym, but he's also the strength and conditioning coach at Gadsden City High School. I'm almost as fired up as Coach Ellis is for this episode. It's going to inspire you. Let's get to it.
But understanding the situation with different kids, I handled it totally differently. Called me a baby, a sissy, everything like, can't believe you're going to get whipped like that.
You want coaches to realize that they can have generational impacts.
Right. Yeah, that was the first time he saw that, okay, when I'm crying, I'm mad.
Coaches realize what kind of impact they can have on a player.
That was always something that I think attracted me. I like helping people.
Our guest on the podcast today is strength and conditioning coach for the Gadsden City Titans, also the owner of Rabid Fitness in Rainbow City. Bret Ellis has been involved with Young Life of Gadsden for many years now. Bret, good to have you. Tell us about your Rabid Fitness. What is that all about?
Well, basically, it's a CrossFit gym. Like I was telling you earlier, we're a strength and conditioning gym for professionals or people that aren't, not necessarily competitive athletes, although we do have our share of high school, college athletes as well that come through the doors and that we work with, but just try to do comprehensive strength, conditioning, fitness for adults and kids.
A wellness program.
Absolutely. We try to be
quality of life and
better quality of life, comprehensive fitness, so more than just bodybuilding, we're trying to encompass everything.
And so beyond that, you also work with you work with all sports?
Right now I work with a handful of sports.
At
Gadsden City, right. Okay. So I've worked with the baseball program, softball program, volleyball, and of course football. And so, we're getting ready to gear up with volleyball for their summer conditioning work as well right now. And of course, we've been going at it since January the 8th with the football team. So,
wow, never stops.
Never stops.
I got you. So, why coach? What drew you to that profession, and when did you know, that's what I got to do?
Well, I will say my first, opportunity to coach people at any level was in the gym, actually, and I would have people ask about different things, working out. And so that, trying to help people get better at something and improve their life, like what you and I were just talking about, their quality of life. That was always something that I think attracted me. I like helping people.
Right.
And I was a youth minister at a local church that had a Christian school, and they had a football program. And so right after college, they said, well, why don't you help? You're going to be around and you want to help with the football program. And it was 8-man football. That was new for me.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of gifted athletes, a lot of good kids that I was already kind of doing ministry work with anyway, because some of those guys were involved in my youth ministry. And I thought, man, this is a great opportunity to be around these guys on a regular, something else that I love in the game of football. And it was just one of those things that, I really took to and definitely enjoyed that time. My very first day in full pads at football, I always share it because it's one of those formative moments for me. And right out of the gate, we're doing C-team football. And to give you a mental picture, I looked like I was so small, I looked like I was wearing catching equipment because my knee pads were resting on top of my cleats.
Yeah, okay.
Literally. I was that small.
Like shin guards.
Yeah, I was just I was a little guy, not big at all. And we ended up doing, we were back in the day when you could do all the one-on-one stuff, and it was one of those. It was the Wild West of football back then, the good old days.
Bull in the ring.
Oh, you could do everything. Yeah, I got to experience all that stuff, which was great. So doing one-on-ones with a bigger kid, and the first time we go head-to-head, and he absolutely massacres me. Like I said, this is my very first time playing football, and I can remember coming around and my dad meeting me around at the back of the line, and it was, and this is going to sound bad on my dad, but it wasn't. I'm thankful it went down exactly like this. He demeaned me, called me a baby, a sissy, everything, like, can't believe you're going to get whipped like that. And I'm, in my 6-year-old mind, I'm thinking, well, this guy's got probably 35 pounds on me, maybe 40. I'm like, but it also in my mind, I just was mad and embarrassed and wanted to do better.
Right.
Like a lot better. And it ignited something within me, and then I started crying. And he said, yeah, go ahead and cry about it. That's going to make it better. But he didn't realize yet, that was the first time he saw that, okay, when I'm crying, I'm mad. I'm focused and I'm mad. And I got back around in the line again, same kid. And the one advantage I did have was I was just a lot quicker than him. So I anticipated the snap count, and I whipped that guy, and, it turned the tables on him. And that's what my dad always said, I knew you could be a football player then.
Kind of lit that competitive fire.
And from then on, that's how I responded to coaching. Yeah. I responded to that old school coaching. Fast forward to my senior year of high school, and Billy Green was my head coach my senior year. And Billy Green was a fantastic man, loved him. And he was pulling his punches, essentially, not literal punches, but of his style of coaching. And he was intense and old school as well, but he was trying intentionally not to come down too hard on guys. Because not everybody did well with that.
Sure.
And I finally told him, I said, Coach Green, I need you to yell at me.
Right.
I need you to get up, all in my business. I need you to crawl down my throat. I need you to get after me on every little thing, because I knew that's what I responded to. And I said, this will help me, and I can be your outlet. I can be your guy that
Example
you can. And I
else.
said, it's not going to bother me.
Right.
It's gonna press me to be better. And so that was just something I was like all the way growing up. My brother's the absolute opposite, much better athlete than me in every sport. But if you get after him, he's going to shut down. I saw that that's just a difference in personalities, just a difference. So their kids are different, and that's been something that I've been able to use, in coaching later on, even with guys back in the day. I don't know if Scott remembers this story with one of the guys from the Boys Ranch years and years ago, and it was one of those things where my reaction that I wanted to have would be to just blow up, but understanding the situation with different kids, I handled it totally differently.
And I was going to ask you about that, maybe expound a little bit more on how do you, as a coach, how do you know when to push, when to hug, when to really get after somebody, and when to put your arm around them?
Well, you've got to know the kid. I mean, that's
relationship.
The big. It is. It's having a relationship, and that I saw, and I can't remember the quote. It was from a coach, and I just saw it the other day, that you're only going to be able to coach a kid to the level of the relationship that you have with them.
Your dad had a relationship with you.
Absolutely. And I knew unequivocally that he loved me. That
Great.
He just wanted me to be the best I could be.
Sure.
And I wanted that for myself as well. And I just responded to tough love, if you want to call it like that.
Well, as a coach, you kind of have to earn the right through building that relationship.
Sure.
Then you know how to coach it with your gym, and also with dealing with athletes, student athletes. How have they changed over the years, or have they changed over the years? And if so, how? And are there positives, negatives?
I would say that there's definitely, I know some would argue kids aren't different. Kids aren't. Yeah, they are. They are different because our society is different now. Our society has changed. I just had the conversation with my oldest. He started watching Band of Brothers. So it's pretty intense, and we were talking about that, and it was actually just a few minutes ago before I came over here. And I said, pause that. And I said, I want you to think about something. I said, those guys that are getting ready to go off to war for World War II, I said, and I want you to think about them that you're seeing on this show. I said, and think about the seniors at high school right now that are about to graduate. And I said, those guys that are seniors are about the average age of those guys that were getting ready to go and fight in World War II. I said, how well do you think those seniors right now would be prepared for that? And he goes, And, you could tell as the wheels were starting to turn, he goes,
right.
That's not, I don't see that being something that would, and I said, exactly. I said, it's just the times are different. Our society is different. We tend to have things now that are a lot easier, I think, in a lot of ways for kids. So I think, and this is not bagging on kids. This is bagging on my generation that are raising them. We've got kids that are more entitled now. We got kids that take things too personally now. They feel like if you're correcting them, that a lot of times they receive it like a personal attack. And so that's one of the things that trying to communicate to them, like, that's not the case.
Right.
Because I'm correcting you. And my own son is one of those guys. I'm not attacking you personally. I'm not, it's not anything that I'm even mad at you. I just want you to do this either differently. I want you to do it better. I'm trying to make you be your best.
Raise your standard.
That's it. And a lot of guys, it's easy to be complacent. It's easy for any of us to be complacent. But I think right now it's pivotal for kids to be involved in sports and to be challenged in sports for that very reason, because we tend to have it easier now. And the children that we're raising are a reflection of that. And so we can't be afraid to be tough and expect bigger and better from these kids that we're raising.
How much of an impact, I mean, you mentioned the impact that was had on you. How much of an impact do you think coaches realize what kind of impact they can have on a player, not just in the moment, but for a lifetime?
I would hope that every coach realizes that, and that's one of the driving forces that has them in coaching to begin with, that they're there to impact these kids on a greater level, than just the sport that they're playing. To me, and just using football as an example, football is probably one of the greatest teachers about life, I think, that there is, and that holds true. That's what we're trying to do is as a coach, is to show these guys that, all right, I know you want to be successful on the field, but also the person that you're becoming, the person that you're going to be off the field when this game, and it ends for everybody, no matter how talented, no matter what level you play to, there comes a time when there's no more game. So,
right.
And coaches have so much time that they are around kids, and you think about just the sheer amount of hours, over a 4-year high school career. If you coach a kid for 4 years straight, and just like you said, it's not really any off time.
Right.
The time that I don't see kids is, maybe a couple weeks here and there during the summer and after Christmas break. And then I see kids on a daily basis, year round. So what a great opportunity to be invested in their lives, to know them deeper than just, whatever, number 12 or, or number 4, number 5.
Right guard.
Right.
Split in. It's Billy or Johnny or whoever.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to know every kid, to a great depth, but you can, if you put forth the effort, you can know a lot of them. and know about them and kind of know what's going on in their lives beyond what's happening, at practice and in the games.
Coach, that's a great segue to my next question, which is challenge of coaching kids that come from tough places, kids that come from father-deficient homes. Talk about that a little bit. I think we've all had situations where we've had to deal with kids that just – you mentioned your dad was there,
Oh, absolutely.
We got a lot of kids that don't have that.
Right. Yeah, and I think so therein for a male coach especially, you get elevated to probably a position that you don't deserve to be in a lot of these kids' lives. And you're there. And so,
like it or not,
so you better do right by it then. And I see it over and over. This kid is looking at me and is looking at my life and has expectations of who I am for him, and on whatever level, as a coach, as somebody that they can trust, as a whatever type of a big brother, a father figure, whatever. I don't want to presuppose that they're elevating me to that status, but I know some do.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for me, but some coaches.
Sure.
And so you're getting put into that position, so you've got to be prepared for that. You have to be ready to to step in, and you can't meet every need, but to the best of your ability, be there to love that kid and to, like I said, that using that word over and over again, invest in them personally, and let them know that they can trust you, that you do care about them on a level more than just how they perform on the field.
And more than just this year.
And more, yeah, absolutely. It's from here on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's the cool thing too, when you see kids that you have that you coached in the past and that still will talk to you and
you're a coach. You'll always be coach.
And that's just a cool thing. And I see guys that have been in the game for forever and ever, coaching, and kids constantly coming back, kids constantly calling them, and you see the great impact that they've had on these kids' lives, because you got guys that have gone on to be successful in this, that, and the other, but they'll come back in anything Coach asks. And Coach Smith is a good example of that. He's just a few years older than me. He's been doing it in depth, full time for forever, and you see kids constantly coming back to him and asking his advice. But he's built that. He's got that kind of skin in the game.
Well, and sharing there's the things that they've done well.
Right.
I want to introduce you to my son, or how awesome is
that's fantastic too.
Getting to experience that kind of stuff. And I think you mentioned something about trust, and I think a lot of young men, especially, come from father-deficient homes, when I say deficient, I mean the dad may be there, but
right,
but
may or may not be present.
Yes, but having a male figure that they can trust, that's just so important. You want coaches to realize that they can have generational impacts,
right,
and be a generational blessing to all the kids that you have the opportunity to coach.
Oh, sure.
Obviously, you're looking for talent when you're building the team, but what other attributes or qualities in athletes are you looking for? Well, you mentioned tenacious earlier.
Yeah, well, that's first and foremost for me. Like, you give me a guy that has no quit and that's willing to go to whatever lengths. He doesn't have an off switch. He's whatever you ask, he's going to do it. And I say he generically, that's he or she.
Sure.
But that's my number one attribute. I want to see that kid that is no holds barred, all in, willing to do whatever, and will give you everything all the time. We've got some of those kids at Gadsden City right now, that I could pop off names of some of these guys that I know that these guys, you just know. I know they're going to give you everything.
They'd be willing to storm the beach
every time. Absolutely. So there are exceptions to the rule. What we were talking about as far as where we are generationally and kids today. But that tenaciousness, I always tell kids, and you have to understand from, I tell kids that, if you're mean, and take the meanness in the right way, it's the right kind of meanness. I think that goes with the toughness attribute.
Hard
right
nose.
there. Just hard nose. You gotta have a mean streak in you. I think toughness is different than meanness. Okay, I always say my oldest son is tough. He's tough as a pine knot. I don't know that you can really hurt him. And then my youngest is mean, but he's not necessarily tough. Oldest is tough, not necessarily mean. Meanness is mean, but not necessarily tough. So if you can have those two together and be smart, those are my three. Those are my three attributes. I take mean, tough, smart over talented any day.
Yeah, Coach, this is great stuff. How can lessons that you mentioned how football, especially because there's so many, you got to depend on each other, but how does that translate to young men becoming great fathers?
Wow. I think just by hopefully they learn things, they see things and see how, I think how you openly relate to your own family when guys get a chance to see that, when they hear how you talk about your family, they're always looking. And I think that's the case in kids that might not have both parents at home, and the case with some kids that do have both parents, but maybe not have certain elements of a relationship you might have with your own family. So I think we're all going through life, and we're looking at ways different people are parented, and I think that it should affect, and I think it has affected how I parent. My wife was even saying the other day, she was making Rice Krispie treats. I know that's fantastic for me. It's one of those mundane things, but she said she could remember as a kid going over to a friend's house, and she said there was some kind of cupcakes or something made. He goes, "Did somebody have a birthday?" "No, my mom just made those." "For what reason?" "No reason, just made them for us." And she said, I knew then, she said, because we didn't do that necessarily in our house, she said, I wanted to be that mom.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, that's the big deal. And we can probably all look at different examples of different things like, I want to do that.
Tell us a little bit about your dad, and then maybe share some stories that maybe, little things that he may have done that had a lasting impact. Maybe not just a football story or just something outside of sports, or just share with some of that.
Well, everything, like I said, he's my, he's my guy, and I don't tell him that enough. I don't make me get emotional here, but all the little things, just growing up, he told me young that because I was a little guy, he's like, you're always probably people are gonna try to pick on you, and you just gotta. He said, you don't go looking to start any trouble with anybody. He said, but you always got to stand your ground.
Yeah.
He said, and always remember it. And this is one of my, it's one of my sayings. It's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog. He'd say that over and over to me as a kid, and that definitely stuck with me. Yeah. And in my mind, it created a mentality in me that there wasn't anything that was off limits for me. He worked a tough job at the steel plant with big responsibilities, and provided, loved to hunt and fish. My boys have, and that's some of the great things for me, seeing him be able to spend time with my sons too, and whereas I don't necessarily have the patience to fish, and my oldest will fish with my dad all day long, and that's one of those great things, seeing them going and doing things together, and him investing in them and learning.
Listen, I don't want to make you emotional, but I kind of do. Just take a minute and just talk directly to your dad. What would you want to say to him?
Oh man,
just a tribute to him.
That I love him. That I appreciate him. Just being, he's not perfect, and he'd tell you he's not. But being the man that he has been to raise me and my brother, and then being a provider, a teacher, a mentor, always being there for us, always having our back on everything, and then also, that in my formative times being tough, and then now as we've gotten older and everything, becoming he's a trusted friend, and that's one of those things I caution parents, of teenagers. I'm like, you're not their friend.
Yeah.
But you can
be.
Yeah, I said, but when you're an adult though, that dynamic changes as you age, and I would trust, I trust him. He's number one. That if I really need some deep advice on anything, he's number one. He's the first one I'm calling.
Absolutely.
And so he's just been, and he's been constant, and he's like I said, old school and tough, and I'm so thankful that he is that guy, that man, and I was raised by that because I wouldn't be, where I am, who I am today without that. So
that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. I'll offer this to you. I think what I biggest compliment I could give my dad was, I don't need you, but I sure want you.
Yeah. Oh man.
Coach, great stuff. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate the insight, your willingness to share, and again, the goal of this podcast is to affect. We'll see.
Yeah.
But if you can change one or two out there, it's worth it.
It's all worthwhile. That's right.
And man, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.